Part 16. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuchi. Chapter 151. Inside the abandoned fertilizer factory. Faced with Zheng Qingshui's horrified question, Zhang Fengjai stopped and introduced himself with a single-handed bow. I am Qingshu, and I have met Mr. Zheng. When the pale-faced old man in tang suit and white hair heard Zhang Fengjai's self-proclaimed Taoist name and thought of his palms as strong as steel and iron, and his power as deep as a lake, a terrifying thought flashed through his mind, and he couldn't help but shouting out. You are a strong man in Taoism. That's right. The top masters who have reached the state of great success in internal strength are already qualified to barely contact and talk with Taoist monks. So, the white-haired old man in tang suit could guess his identity as a Taoist monk, and Zhang Fengjai nodded and admitted it without any surprise. I am a Taoist monk. Tang Jianhai has met immortal Qingshu. The moment Zhang Fengjai nodded and admitted it, the white-haired old man in tang suit immediately knelt down on both knees to apologize. Just now, Tang was blind and bumped into the immortal Qingshu. I hope that the immortal Qingshu can forgive Tang generously. Tang Jianhai, who has a unique status in the Chamber of Commerce, is not easily neglected or bumped into even by the President Zheng Guangshui. Now, the high-ranking Tang Jianhai, kneeling on his knees, begged, which made Zheng Guangshui and the remaining more than 70 young men in black suits look extremely shocked and surprised. Seeing that Zheng Guangshui was just standing there stupidly, Tang Jianhai, who knew the moodiness of the Taoist masters very well, quickly knelt down and moved to his side, then reached out and pulled his towel, and reminded him in a low voice. President, if you don't want to die, kneel down quickly. After hearing Tang Jianhai's reminder, Zheng Guangshui quickly knelt down on his knees and asked in a low voice. Tang Lao, who is he? At the same time, the remaining more than 70 young men in black suits also quickly knelt down on their knees to Zhang Fengjai. He is an immortal who can call the wind and rain and is omnipotent. Looking at Zhang Fengjai with his hands behind his back and an indifferent expression, Tang Jianhai sighed with envy in his eyes. Zi. In order to avoid being hunted down by his enemies, Zheng Guangshui has always lived a simple life, but in the circles he can contact, he can still hear some rumors about Taoist immortals, and vaguely hear their contempt for mortals. Not only did he lead the siege of the Chamber of Commerce Masters, but he also used a pistol to sneak attack just now. Given the other party's identity, he will definitely not let him go. Therefore, after hearing Tang Jianhai's sigh, Zheng Guangshui couldn't help but take a breath of cold air, and the despair that suddenly emerged in his heart made him fall directly to the ground. President Zheng, as long as you agree to my two requests, you can not only return alive and well, but also bring Master Zheng back safely. Originally, he wanted to use the shape-changing talisman he had just drawn to transform into a black giant python, further demonstrating his Taoist power, so that he could really shock Zheng Guangshui and make him pay the ransom obediently, and not cause trouble for him and Sulitzi in the future. But Tang Jianhai's exaggeration of the Taoist monks had a more deterrent effect than using Taoist methods. So, Zhang Fengjai not only put away the talisman paper he had just quietly taken out, but also decided to increase the amount of the ransom so that he could get more wealth to control. Please tell me, immortal. The immortal who had the power to call the wind and rain and was omnipotent was willing to ask for forgiveness. This immediately cheered Zheng Guangshui up from his despair, and then he quickly knelt again and put on a respectful and obedient attitude. The first request is that from now on, your brother Chamber of Commerce is not allowed to cause trouble for me, otherwise, I will personally go to your Chamber of Commerce's headquarters to have a look. Please rest assured, immortal, in the future, wherever the immortal appears, the people of our brother Chamber of Commerce will either immediately give way to him or kneel down and bow their heads, and will never provoke the immortal's displeasure. Zhang Fengjai's first request was not excessive, so Zheng Guangshui not only nodded in agreement, but also patted his chest to make a promise to give way to him. The second request is to prepare 200 million and 300 million in cash before 12 o'clock tomorrow. Of which 200 million in cash is your brother Chamber of Commerce's apology for offending me, and 300 million in cash is the ransom for your son Zheng Heiran. No problem. For the brother Chamber of Commerce, which has been rampant in Ningji City for more than 10 years and controls nearly 70% of the sand supply, it has long accumulated a huge fortune. Taking out a huge ransom of 500 million in one go will not affect the normal operation of the Chamber of Commerce at all, so Zheng Guangshui nodded in agreement without hesitation. I will arrange for someone to receive 500 million in cash tomorrow morning. Zheng Guangshui's straightforward attitude made Zhang Fengjai nod with satisfaction, and then waved his hand and ordered. Okay, take your Chamber of Commerce people away from here now. Follow the immortal's order. After knocking his head heavily, Zheng Guangshui quickly stood up, and then ordered the uninjured young men in black suits to take the unconscious and dead people away from the abandoned fertilizer plant. When the sound of the car gradually driving away came from outside the iron gate, Zhang Fengjai retracted his attention and took a deep breath. Afterwards, he directly mobilized his spiritual power to perform the Qingfeng step, turning into a breeze and rushing towards the abandoned warehouse. When he dug out a blue bead buried deep underground, he did not immediately take the blue bead from the mud pit, but just let the blue bead stay in the mud pit, got up and left the warehouse, and then went straight to the 3 abandoned factories. After digging out a green bead, a gray bead, and a purple bead in different locations of the 3 abandoned factories, Zhang Fengjai returned to the red brick vacant lot in front of the office building, and then bent down to dig out the red bead that had just been buried. Looking at the red bead lying quietly in the mud pit, Zhang Fengjai continued to take a deep breath, and immediately mobilized 100% of his spiritual power to perform the Qingfeng step. In just 5 seconds, he took out 5 spiritual beads from different locations, and then turned into a gust of wind and quickly left the fertilizer factory. Just when Zhang Fengjai had just left the fertilizer factory, in a tea house about 5 miles away from the fertilizer factory, a middle-aged Taoist priest wearing a green Taoist robe, about 40 years old, with a slightly feminine temperament, suddenly opened his eyes and flashed a cold light. Then, the middle-aged Taoist priest quickly stood up and rushed out of the tea house, and then like an agile monkey, he stepped on the roofs of different floors and rushed to the abandoned fertilizer factory. At the same time, the young traffic policeman with a puzzled look on his face, carrying the high-definition camera he had just borrowed, also accelerated to the abandoned fertilizer factory. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 152. The young traffic policeman who drove the police car to the fertilizer factory looked at the high-definition camera placed on his chest with doubts and confusion in his eyes. Because when he just went to the Criminal Police Brigade of the Municipal Public Security Bureau to report a crime, he wanted to check in advance whether the images and sounds he recorded were clear, but he accidentally discovered that there was a problem with the recording software on his mobile phone. Whether it was the scene of Zheng Heiran and others besieging Zhang Fengjai, or the voice of Zhang Fengjai blackmailing Zheng Heiran, they were not successfully recorded, which also cost him the opportunity to report the crime. But unwilling to give up, he directly borrowed a set of the latest high-definition cameras from a technology company closest to the fertilizer factory, intending to continue recording evidence of the brothers' Chamber of Commerce and Zhang Fengjai's crimes. Hateful. The middle-aged Taoist priest who quickly landed on the red brick clearing saw the dug mud pit in front of him, cursed with a gloomy face, turned around and turned into a gust of wind and headed straight for the abandoned factory and warehouse. 3 seconds later, when the middle-aged Taoist priest returned to the red brick open space in front of the office building, his gloomy face seemed to be dripping with water. If you dare to secretly steal the 5 elements spiritual beads that Pandeo used to build the foundation, no matter you are a monk from a well-known family or a casual cultivator who practices alone, Pandeo will definitely tear your tendons, peel off your skin, and swallow you. Your blood refines your soul. After gritting his teeth and swearing, The middle-aged Taoist priest waved his robe vigorously. Then, a green bamboo snake about 10 centimeters long, a 1,000-legged centipede with a gray body, a golden toad, a giant red scorpion with a huge iron tail swinging, and a ferocious black spider appeared respectively. Fall on the red bricks in the open space. Force a drop of blood from your body to help me track down the murderer who stole the 5 elements spirit orb. The middle-aged Taoist priest took out a slightly old talisman paper and 3 incense sticks as thick as chopsticks from his sleeve. Ordered to 5 kinds of poisons containing huge poisons. Facing the middle-aged Taoist priest's order, the 5 poisonous creatures showed a trace of hesitation in their eyes. What's going on? Do you need me to take action myself? Seeing the 5 carefully cultivated poisons but not obeying the orders to force out the blood essence, a frightening cold light flashed in the eyes of the middle-aged Taoist priest. Facing the middle-aged Taoist priest's scolding, the hesitant eyes of the 5 poisonous creatures were instantly replaced by horror, and then they spit out a drop of blood. Regardless of whether he is a monk in a Taoist sect or a demon beast who has successfully cultivated, blood essence is still the foundation and source of strength. If one's own essence and blood are lost too much, at least one's cultivation level will regress, or at worst, one's soul will be shattered and the meridians will be broken. Therefore, after spitting out a drop of his own essence and blood, the 5 poisonous substances that were originally so powerful instantly weakened like ordinary animals and insects. In response to this, the middle-aged Taoist priest reached out and sucked 5 drops of blood essence without any care, and used a special magic to fuse the 5 drops of blood essence together. Immediately afterwards, the middle-aged Taoist priest threw the fused blood essence directly into the air, and then used his spiritual power to drive the talisman in his hand. As the flames of the talisman paper quickly enveloped and burned the blood essence and blood after the 5 poisons were fused, the middle-aged Taoist priest who used his spiritual power to light the incense recited the incantation silently with a respectful expression. The 5 poisons control the 5 elements, the 5 elements control the 3 souls, the 3 souls control the 7 souls, and the 7 souls chase the real murderer. As the middle-aged Taoist priest silently recited the incantation, the 5 poisonous essences and blood burned by the spell flames quickly condensed into an ugly monster with a green snake head, a red scorpion tail, spider legs, a toad's back, and a centipede body. And at the moment when the middle-aged Taoist priest used the essence and blood of 5 poisons to condense an ugly monster, Zhang Fenjai, who was using the breeze step to speed up to the Golden Orchid courtyard, suddenly stopped and turned around to look in the direction of the fertilizer factory, showing an extremely solemn look on his face. 5 Poison Tracking Technique. It seems that the other party is not only an evil cultivator who practices poison, but also a master who has reached the peak of the 9th level of Qi condensation. After retracting his gaze from the fertilizer factory, Zhang Fenjai quickly glanced at the surrounding environment and finally located the Great Wall Hotel 30 meters away. He used his Qingfeng step with all his strength to avoid the pedestrians on the road, and then used his spiritual power to fly into the air and rush into a room with the windows open but the lights turned off. After quickly scanning the room and confirming that there were no guests staying, Zhang Fenjai immediately took out 9 blank talismans and a porcelain bottle containing the blood of the black python from his sleeves. Then, he used the blood of the black python to draw 3 evil-repelling talismans, 3 evil-breaking talismans, and 2 soul-attracting talismans, and then cut his finger to draw a soul-fixing talisman. Immediately afterwards, he pasted the 8 talismans drawn with the black python's blood on the 4 sides and corners of the room, and then held the soul-fixing talisman drawn with his own blood in his hand. Heaven and earth are infinite. After retreating to the middle of the room again, Zhang Fenjai made a hand seal and chanted a mantra, using his spiritual power to drive the 8 spells. As the 8 paper talismans attached to different locations in the room burned automatically, the light formed by the flames of the talismans instantly illuminated the entire room. Because Zhang Fenjai was focused on casting spells, he neither noticed that it was a couple's theme room, nor did he see a beautiful girl squatting on the toilet in the transparent glass bathroom, with surprise in her eyes. Qincan borrows the law. After the 8 talismans were completely burned, Zhang Fengjai continued to twist the spell and recite the incantation softly. As the magic formula blended into the burning flames, 8 flames rushed to Zhang Fengjai like fire snakes, and then circled around him. Zi. Just when Zhang Fengjai used the talismans drawn with 8 black python blood to interfere with the 5 poisons tracking technique, the ugly monster floating in the air roared extremely violently, and directly opened its snake mouth to swallow the burning flames of the talisman. Then, the ugly monster circled around the mud pit where the 5 elements spirit pearl was buried, and while floating in the air again, its eyes looked directly in the direction where Zhang Fengjai was casting the spell. Puff. Just when the ugly monster cast his evil eyes, the flames of the 2 exorcism talismans and the 2 evil-breaking talismans were extinguished directly, and Zhang Fengjai also stepped back and spit out a mouthful of blood. When the beautiful girl squatting on the toilet saw Zhang Fengjai spitting blood surrounded by flames, she immediately stood up with a worried look in her eyes. The 3 pure ones descended to the mortal world to protect my soul and settle the world. Without wiping off the blood on the corner of his mouth, Zhang Fengjai mobilized his spiritual power to drive the soul-fixing talisman in his hand to burn automatically into flames. While his 10 fingers quickly condensed the spell, he shouted and chanted the spell. Afterwards, the flames burning in the soul-fixing talisman quickly condensed into a 2-meter-tall, majestic golden armor giant holding a golden sword. Immediately afterwards, the golden armor giant swung the long sword in his hand and slashed hard at the ugly monster's gaze. Looking at the golden armor giant transformed by the flame of the talisman paper, swinging the long sword like a god, the beautiful girl's eyes showed excitement, and she quickly reached out to cover her mouth, fearing that she would shout out involuntarily and disturb Zhang Fengjai who was casting the spell. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuqi. Chapter 153. Inside the Abandoned Fertilizer Factory. Zi. Just as the golden armor giant swung his sword to slash at the eyes that were looking at Zhang Fengjai, the ugly monster suddenly let out a painful roar like a green snake, and then fell directly to the ground. The middle-aged Taoist priest who was respectfully chanting a spell to the 3 incense sticks immediately stopped chanting, and a solemn look appeared on his face. Looking up at the direction the ugly monster had just stared at, a terrifying cold light flashed in the middle-aged Taoist priest's eyes, and he bit his tongue and spit out a mouthful of heart blood, and then sprayed it on the ugly monster's body. The ugly monster that quickly absorbed the heart blood immediately exuded a strong evil breath, and then rose into the air again, and then opened his snake mouth and sprayed out a red light that exuded an evil breath. The red light full of evil breath was like lightning, directly penetrating the obstacles of high-rise buildings and quickly hitting the golden armor giant in front of Zhang Fengjai. Puff! 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 At the moment when the golden armor giant was hit by the red light, Zhang Fengjai took 3 steps back uncontrollably and spit out 3 mouthfuls of blood. The originally ruddy face turned pale instantly, which made the beautiful girl in the bathroom clench her fists in worry, with an anxious look in her eyes. Fight. The soul-fixing talisman drawn with one's own blood has a very close connection with the mind. Therefore, after the golden armor giant transformed by the soul-fixing talisman was broken by the red light, Zhang Fengjai's mind was instantly severely damaged, and his strength dropped by nearly 50%. Although the distance between them was nearly 10 miles, which was far beyond the range of vision, the chi induction between the cultivators let him know that the opponent was preparing for a second remote attack. His own cultivation and strength were not as good as the opponent's, and now that his mind was severely damaged, he was no match for the opponent. Therefore, in order to successfully resist the opponent's second attack and to completely cut off the magic of the 5 poisons tracking, Zhang Fengjai finally decided to use the life-saving trump card left to him by those special beings when he left the Rat Mountain Taoist Temple. He took a deep breath, reached out to wipe off the blood stains left at the corners of his mouth, and waved his hand to disperse the flames of the two evil repelling talismans and the two evil breaking talismans. After the whole room fell into endless darkness again, Zhang Fengjai sat cross-legged on the ground with his knees bent, and then used his mind to mobilize a trace of special power sealed in the heart, a trace of demon power full of endless resentment, endless evil spirits and endless blood. As the sealed demon power was released, a huge white rat head slowly appeared above Zhang Fengjai's head. Just as Zhang Fengjai was about to use the life-saving trump card to deal with the next second attack, the ugly monster floating in the air had opened its snake mouth again to spray evil light. But at this moment, a slight break sound made the middle-aged Taoist who was reciting the spell again frown. When he saw a young policeman in uniform and carrying a camera quietly walk into the open iron gate, a trace of fear and hesitation flashed in his eyes. Compared with young cultivators like Zhang Fengjai who are new and don't know the complexity of the world, as a poison cultivator who has been practicing alone for nearly 30 years, the middle-aged Taoist is very clear about how powerful the mysterious department secretly formed by the country is, and how cruel the means of treating poison cultivators and evil cultivators are. Therefore, when he saw that the person entering the abandoned fertilizer plant was actually a public official of the country, he would appear fearful and hesitant. After all, the impact and sensation caused by secretly killing ordinary people and secretly attacking public officials of the country are different. Monster. When the young traffic police found that a passage had been cleared out of the weeds in front of him, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. When he looked up and saw the ugly monster floating in the air, the fear that suddenly emerged in his heart made him retreat one after another and couldn't help but scream. The young traffic policeman's scream made the middle-aged Taoist priest's face change, and the fear and hesitation in his eyes were instantly replaced by determination. Then, he directly waved the sleeves of his Taoist robe to put away the ugly monster and the 5 poisonous creatures, and his spiritual power combined with his body skills and martial arts turned into a gust of wind, and quickly left the abandoned fertilizer factory. Just as the middle-aged Taoist priest left the abandoned fertilizer factory, the young traffic policeman who couldn't bear the fear in his heart also threw away the camera in his hand, and then rode the police car to escape from the fertilizer factory. 20 seconds. 1 minute. 3 minutes. After waiting for 3 minutes, not only did the attack in the sense not come, but the feeling of being tracked in his heart also disappeared all night, which made Zhang Fengjai very confused. But his cautious character still made him wait silently for nearly 5 minutes. After being 100% sure that the other party had truly given up attacking and tracking, he used his mind to begin to seal the unused trump card. When the demonic power that transformed into the white rat head was sealed again in the heart, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief, and when he stood up and prepared to leave, the lights in the dark room suddenly flashed. Zhang Fengjai, who suddenly became nervous, immediately mobilized 50% of his spiritual power and turned around to ask. "Don't be nervous, it's me." The beautiful girl who pressed the wall switch with her right hand quickly opened her mouth to signal. "Who are you?" Zhang Fengjai could feel that the beautiful girl in front of him was just an ordinary person. While secretly breathing a sigh of relief, he slowly dispersed the mobilized spiritual power and asked. "My name is Zhou Yaru, and I'm a junior student at Ningji Normal College." After retracting her hand from pressing the wall switch, the beautiful girl introduced herself nervously. "Today is the birthday of one of my besties, and I'm here to attend her birthday party. It's just because I was in a hurry and the bathroom in the private room was broken, so I had to go to the room that my bestie booked with her boyfriend for convenience." Although Zhou Yaru's explanation sounded reasonable, it had a fatal flaw. This was the only reason Zhang Fengjai was confused and remained vigilant. "If it's convenient, why don't you turn on the light?" After hearing Zhang Fengjai's question, Zhou Yaru pointed to the bathroom and the transparent glass window and explained in a low voice with a slightly red face. "Excuse me." Through the transparent glass window, he looked at the toilet and bathtub in the bathroom, and then turned to look at the heart-shaped bed strewn with roses and the auxiliary massage chair. He immediately understood the reason why Joyaru was in the dark. After all, the romantic arrangement and ambiguous atmosphere are definitely a visual and psychological impact for a thin-skinned beautiful girl. In order to avoid the excitement of such embarrassing scenes, it seems reasonable to do so in the dark. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan-Yoon Yuchi. Chapter 154. I'm sorry, I came in by mistake in a moment of impatience. Please forgive me, Miss Jo. After clearing up the doubts in his mind, Zhang Fengjai immediately thought that when the other party was taking advantage of the bathroom, his adventurous intrusion would definitely frighten the other party, and at the same time, the dazzling Taoist skills just shown would also frighten the other party. Therefore, he quickly apologized. Fine. Facing Zhang Fengjai's apology, Joyaru quickly waved her hand. In the dark, you didn't know there was anyone in the room, so I don't blame you for this. Since the other party did not pursue the fault of breaking into the room just now, Zhang Fengjai breathed a sigh of relief and quickly left. Girl, we are destined to meet each other, and we will see you in the future. I have some important things to deal with now, so I will leave first. Because the severe damage to his mind requires meditation to recover, which requires an absolutely quiet and safe environment, so he is now eager to return to the apartment in Golden Orchid Courtyard. Please wait. Just when Zhang Fengjai turned around and was about to leave the room full of ambiguous atmosphere through the open window, Joyaru's voice suddenly came from behind to persuade him to stay. Miss Jo, what else can you do? Zhang Fengjai turned around and looked at Joyaru and asked. The talisman that burned automatically just now and the golden armor giant that transformed were not tricks and magic, right? After thinking for a moment, Joyaru asked with a look of anticipation in her eyes. Miss Jo is right, everything you saw just now was magic. The moment Joyaru tried to persuade him to stay, he knew that the other party must be asking about the dazzling Taoist technique he had just performed. This gave Zhang Fengjai a headache and he didn't know how to hide it. After all, the other party is just an ordinary girl in the secular world, and is not suitable for knowing and being exposed to Taoism that goes beyond scientific understanding. The guess given by the other party out of curiosity immediately reminded him of excuses and reasons for covering up. Therefore, he quickly nodded and admitted, and began to make up his identity. I would like to solemnly introduce you. My surname is Zhang and my first name is Maple Leaf. I am a magician who specializes in sleight of hand performances. Hearing that Zhang Fengjai had fabricated his identity based on his guess, Joyaru couldn't help but give him a look, then revealed and questioned with a hint of dissatisfaction in her tone. Whether it's a self-burning talisman or a transforming golden armor giant, if it's all magic, then detailed arrangements and coordination must be made in advance. I don't know when you booked the room. Where is the companion who performed the magic with you? He just followed the other party's guesses and made up temporary reasons without thinking of the deeper flaws. Therefore, facing Joyaru's exposure and questioning, Zhang Fengjai suddenly didn't know how to refute and answer. Seeing the speechless Zhang Fengjai being questioned by him, Joyaru continued to question with a glint of pride in her eyes. If you insist that the talisman that spontaneously ignited and the golden armor giant that transformed just now are not Taoism, then why did you try so hard to prove the real existence of Taoism in front of the bus station half a month ago? When he heard Joyaru mention that half a month ago, he exposed the scam of the old man with white beard at the bus station and used the talisman to prove the real existence of Taoism, Zhang Fengjai suddenly raised his head and began to observe the other person carefully. In the end, the image of Joyaru in front of him gradually overlapped with that of the beautiful girl wearing a light blue lapel waist dress and holding a few books in her arms. This made him couldn't help but shake his head and sigh with a wry smile. It turns out it's you. I didn't expect that among the hundreds of people watching, you would not only notice me, but also never forget me. Zhang Fengjai's sigh made Joyaru feel very happy. No matter where and at any time, Beautiful girls are always the most eye-catching. Zhang Fengjai flattered her with emotion. Thank you for your compliment. Faced with Zhang Fengjai's unsolicited flattery, Zhou Yaru happily accepted it and then asked with a smile on her face. Now, are you still insisting that the automatic burning spell and the transformed golden armor giant just now are magic? In response, Zhang Fengjai shook his head and smiled bitterly, but did not continue to deny it. Zhang Fengjai, I want to ask you something. The default was to wait for indirect recognition. After Zhou Yaru breathed a long sigh of relief, she suddenly asked nervously. Do you think there are ghosts in this world? After hearing Zhou Yaru's question, Zhang Fengjai immediately mobilized his spiritual power to open his eyes, and then carefully observed the other party. There was no trace of resentment or evil spirit, which made him frown slightly and asked. Miss Zhou, why did you suddenly think of this question? Well. Walking to the bedside with a sigh, Zhou Yaru introduced with a slightly frightened expression. 3 months ago, a girl in the dormitory next to ours died unexpectedly. Although the reason given by the school was that she had a sudden heart attack and died of suffocation due to insufficient blood supply, I know this is a lie. Because not only did I know that girl well, I knew she had no so-called heart disease at all, but I also witnessed her death with my own eyes. Her eyes were gouged out alive, there were black handprints on her neck, and the veins on her arms were protruding, so I suspect she was probably killed by a ghost. After hearing Zhou Yaru's story, especially the description of the deceased's appearance after death, Zhang Fengjai knew that her guess was basically close to the truth. But the only thing that is not 100% certain now is whether there will be another identical victim next time. Because the ghost who has really committed the crime will be unable to control his mind and continue to do evil because of the pleasure and power surge brought by killing. No. When Zhang Fengjai asked if there were other victims, Zhou Yaru hurriedly shook her head and explained. Since the accidental death of that girl, the school has been safe and sound until now. After hearing Zhou Yaru's explanation, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but began to doubt her previous guess. Miss Zhou, are you sure you didn't see things? Or is it that the girl herself has other causes of illness? I'm 100% sure. Faced with Zhang Fengjai's doubts, Zhou Yaru explained with certainty. Firstly, the girl who died unexpectedly was named Zhou Jingying. She was not only my neighbor in the same community, but also my classmate in elementary school, middle school, and high school. So I can be 100% sure that she had no heart disease or other diseases. Secondly, the people who witnessed Zhou Jingying's death included me, 5 roommates, and 2 people in our dormitory. One of the roommates took a 6-month leave of absence because he couldn't bear the psychological pressure. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 155. If she had no other diseases, then Zhou Jingying's appearance when she died would be very consistent with what a ghost would do. But then the other party suddenly stopped, which was completely contrary to the ghost's code of conduct. This made Zhang Fengjai quite puzzled, and at the same time, he also had the interest to investigate it clearly. Miss Zhou, I wonder if your school's control is strict. You want to go to the scene to take a look? The smart Zhou Yaru immediately guessed Zhang Fengjai's plan. That's right. Zhang Fengjai nodded and admitted without denying. Because only through the investigation of the scene can I determine the real cause of Zhou Jingying's death and whether there is a ghost in your school. Then let's go now. Zhou Yaru immediately stood up and gestured. No rush for now. After extending his hand to signal Zhou Yaru to sit down, Zhang Fengjai gave the time to go to the school to check. Tomorrow afternoon at 6 o'clock, I will go to your girls' dormitory to check. In fact, the reason why he did not go to the normal college to check immediately was his own consideration. Firstly, his mind was severely damaged, so he could only exert half of his strength. Before he could determine whether the murderer who killed Zhou Jingying was a ghost or other evil creature, and before he knew the strength of the other party, he followed the warning of the saint that a gentleman should not stand under a dangerous wall. He planned to go to the normal college for a detailed investigation after he recovered all his strength. Secondly, he had to return to the Golden Orchid Court apartment tonight and personally make a delicious barbecue for Sulitsi that would improve her skin and temperament. Because the python meat that was promoted to the level of a demon beast had a shelf life of less than 1 day and a shelf life of 2 days. That's fine. In order to avoid the eagle eyes of the dormitory and sneak into the girls' dormitory safely, he needed the help of his roommates. At this time, they were having fun in the box downstairs and were definitely unwilling to return to the dormitory early. Therefore, Jo Yaru agreed with Jang Fenjai's proposal, took out her mobile phone to leave each other's contact information, and then agreed on the specific time and place to meet. Afterwards, Jang Fenjai left the hotel through the open window, while Jo Yaru absent-mindedly returned to the box downstairs. In a state of severe mental trauma, it was not suitable to continue to mobilize spiritual power to perform the Qingfeng step, so Jang Fenjai reached out to stop a taxi, and then returned to the apartment safely. At this time, Sulitsi was preparing a sumptuous dinner in the kitchen like a good wife and mother. "Sister Litsi, let me do it." Picking up the bag on the coffee table, Jang Fenjai walked into the kitchen and ordered Sulitsi. "No, we can have dinner after cooking this dish, you go to the sofa and rest for a while," Sulitsi, who was wearing an apron, ordered while shaking her head while cooking. In response, Jang Fenjai's eyes flashed with a touch of tenderness, and he took out the python meat sealed with a spell, then reached out to untie the apron behind her, and ordered with a smile. "Sister Litsi, go and rest first. I'll make you a delicious dish that will leave you with an aftertaste." Afterwards, he didn't give Sulitsi any chance to refute. He pushed her out of the kitchen and used a frying pan and cooking oil to make a fried python meat. Although the production process is very simple, the python blood, which contains sufficient blood and flesh essence, is definitely better than any delicacy made by top chefs. After using the acupointment massage technique to help her dissolve and absorb the blood and flesh essence bursting out of the python meat, Sulitsi felt ecstatic and immediately gave a wet kiss that lasted more than a minute, which also made Jang Fenjai truly experience the wonderful feeling of kissing. After all, his first kiss with Shen Loxi was not just a simple touch of lips, but also a very short touch. "I still have work to do, you go wash up and rest first." Sulitsi, who seems to have a hot temper, is also a fledgling who only knows theory and has no practical experience. The overly stiff and forceful movements eventually caused each other's lips to be bitten. The blood with a hint of fishy and salty taste made Sulitsi sober up from the impulse that she couldn't help herself. After thinking of her agreement with Shen Loxi, she rushed into the bedroom with a shy look. She stretched out her tongue to lick the mixed blood left on her lips. The fishy, salty, and sweet taste made him truly experience the taste of love, and at the same time, he truly confirmed Sulitsi's status from the heart. Taking a deep breath and forcibly suppressing the sweet feeling that emerged in his heart, Jang Fenjai got up and simply cleaned up the leftovers on the coffee table, and after washing it, he returned to the bedroom to meditate and recover from the trauma of his mind. "Jang Fenjai, I'm here." Jo Yaru, who was waiting at the gate of the college in advance, immediately showed a happy smile on her face when she saw Jang Fenjai, who was leisurely, slowly strolling over. According to the agreement with Zheng Guangshui, the president of the Brother Chamber of Commerce yesterday, Jang Fenjai had to go to receive a huge amount of cash of up to 500 million at 12 o'clock this morning. He asked Shen Loxi for leave early in the morning and did not go to work. At the same time, Sulitsi needed to investigate Lu Xiaoyi, the head of the group's construction department, and the workers who watched indifferently when Li Changjuan's man fell from the building. Therefore, Jang Fenjai could only trouble Zhu Zhenjun to temporarily rent 2 large container trucks to deliver the piled-up 500 million cash to the Red Cross. Count, check, and deposit in different banks. After a whole set of tedious procedures, it was already 4:30 in the afternoon. During this period, Zhu Zhenjun received a very important call and drove back to the provincial capital in advance. At the same time, the headquarters of the Red Cross is not very far from Ningji Normal University. Therefore, when he did not need to go to work, he went to the normal college in advance. First, it is to feel the atmosphere of the university campus and see if university life is as beautiful as described in the novel. Secondly, we should also observe the feng shui layout of the normal college in advance to see if there is any possibility of evil spirits forming. But what he didn't expect was that Zhou Yaru would guard the school gate more than an hour earlier than the agreed time. With her high ponytail and a long white dress with a waistband, Zhou Yaru looked pure and holy, but also a little more naughty and cute. This also aroused the admiration and enthusiasm of many male classmates in the past. Attention, as well as the envious and jealous looks of female classmates. "Hello, Miss Zhou," Zhang Fengjai greeted with a smile as he walked quickly to the entrance of the college. As the saying goes, once you're new, you'll get familiar the second time, and after the third time you're easy to get along with. Hearing Zhang Fengjai still calling her girl in a very polite way, Zhou Yaru gave him a very dissatisfied look and suggested, "This is the third time you and I have met. We can be considered very good friends. If you don't mind, how about I call you Maple Leaf and you call me Yaru?" "Okay." It was just a change in name, and it was not an excessive request. Zhang Fengjai readily agreed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 156. Ningji Normal College, in front of the school gate. By the way, Fengjai, have you eaten? After getting Zhang Fengjai's promise, Zhou Yaru seemed very happy. Suddenly, a cunning look flashed in her eyes, and she touched her stomach and asked. It's 5 minutes before 5 o'clock. Do you think I've eaten? Because he was busy dealing with the donation of 500 million in cash in order to make up for the overdrawn fortune in time, he and Zhu Zhenjun were so busy that they didn't have lunch. So, when he heard Zhou Yaru mention the word eating, the hunger that came instantly made him ask back without caring about his manners. Anyway, there is still an hour before the agreed time to check the dormitory. As the host, how about I spend money to treat you to a big meal today? Zhou Yaru generously offered to treat Zhang Fengjai without paying any attention to his unhappy question. Just keep it simple, don't spend too much. Hearing that Zhou Yaru wanted to treat him to a big meal, Zhang Fengjai kindly reminded her, considering that she was still a student. But what he didn't know was that Zhou Yaru's seemingly kind invitation was actually a naked conspiracy, and the so-called feast was just a kind of packaging and politeness in language. Got it? After nodding to indicate that she understood, Zhou Yaru took out her mobile phone to check the time, and then reminded with a smile. Let's go, I'll take you to a feast now. Instead of going to the several high-end restaurants and hotels opposite the college, Zhou Yaru walked directly into the college. In this regard, Zhang Fengjai, who neither knew the situation of the college nor Zhou Yaru's true thoughts, could only follow obediently. As a school established for more than 40 years, Ningji Normal College has trained more than a dozen top educators and tens of thousands of excellent teachers. The college not only exudes a very strong literary atmosphere, but also the overall layout and greening are very reasonable. Walking on the small path paved with bluestone, looking at the weeping willows planted on both sides of the road, and hearing the faint sound of reading, Zhang Fengjai gradually felt that his murderous soul was baptized, and his state of mind that had been unable to reach perfection for a long time was sublimated. When the faint sound of reading disappeared, Zhang Fengjai's face was as calm as water, but he couldn't help but feel ecstasy in his heart. Because of the sublimated state of mind just now, his own perception successfully broke through the bottleneck of the realm. Next, he only needs to use the 5 elements spirit beads he just obtained, combined with the 100-year-old wild ginseng given by Shen Geo, to easily advance to the 7th level of qi condensation, so as to have the means of spiritual power transformation. Because his mind was attracted by the surrounding environment and the sublimation of his state of mind, Zhang Fengjai did not notice Zhou Yaru, who was leading the way in front. Not only did she slow down her pace and walk side by side with him, but her deliberately close posture easily gave people the feeling of a couple walking, which made some male classmates passing by reveal naked envy and jealousy in their eyes. Zhang Fengjai, who had been waiting until he arrived at the restaurant of the college and was stared at by at least dozens of male classmates with envy and jealousy, woke up from his ecstasy. Although he saw the naked envy and jealousy in the eyes of dozens of male classmates around him, Zhang Fengjai did not realize that it was deliberately caused by Zhou Yaru. After all, with Zhou Yaru's pure and beautiful appearance and temperament, she is definitely a goddess at the level of school beauties. And a goddess like this will definitely not lack suitors. The other party walking alone with him will inevitably attract the attention and envy of some suitors, so Zhang Fengjai chose to ignore it without any concern. Fengjai, this is the student cafeteria that our college has just renovated. Although it is not as luxurious as the decoration of the restaurants outside, the variety and taste of the food are not inferior to some chefs. Seeing that Zhang Fengjai had not yet realized that he was being used by her, Zhou Yaru felt a little guilty, but in order to get a quiet learning environment in the future, she ruthlessly prepared to start the second step of the plan. You're the one treating us anyway, I'll just follow your instructions. Seeing that there were many students eating in the restaurant, Zhang Fengjai believed it and nodded in agreement, but the words he said made Zhou Yaru's guilt disappear instantly. Let's go. After rolling her eyes at him in frustration, Zhou Yaru continued to move closer to Zhang Fengjai and gestured. Zhang Fengjai, who still didn't notice anything wrong, followed him into the restaurant with expectation in his eyes. Look, that's Zhou Yaru, the holy goddess of our college. The moment Zhou Yaru appeared in the restaurant, she immediately attracted the attention of all the male students in the restaurant, and some male students who knew her and understood her even talked loudly. Yes, it is Zhou Yaru, who is as famous as the ice goddess Xiao Yuxuan and the passionate goddess Xia Yuqian. Hey, who is the ordinary boy who behaves intimately with goddess Zhou? No way. Could it be that the holy goddess I have been pursuing has completely fallen? Quick, go and inform Senior Chen from Taekwondo and tell him that the holy goddess he reserved was dumped by someone else. Although I had guessed that Zhou Yaru's charm was very strong in advance, I didn't expect it to be so crazy. After hearing various discussions in the restaurant, Zhang Fengjai vaguely regretted coming to the restaurant alone with her. Zhou Yaru, who also heard the discussion of the male classmates around her, glanced at Zhang Fengjai with the corner of her eyes, and a hint of hesitation flashed in her eyes. However, when she heard someone invite Senior Chen from Taekwondo, the hesitation in her eyes was instantly replaced by determination. Fengjai, find an empty seat first, I'll help you order. Taking advantage of the noisy environment of the restaurant, Zhou Yaru deliberately crawled to Zhang Fengjai's ear and whispered. And her overly intimate behavior immediately caused a commotion in the restaurant. Okay, go ahead. After nodding, Zhang Fengjai watched Zhou Yaru go to the window for food, with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Classmate, no matter you are a rich second generation or a powerful official second generation, the holy goddess Zhou Yaru is not a woman you can touch. Just when Zhang Fengjai was thinking about the real reason why Zhou Yaru invited him to the cafeteria for dinner alone, a thin male classmate who came towards him whispered in his ear. Because the holy goddess Zhou Yaru has long been designated as the woman of Chen Xiaofeng, the president of Taekwondo. As the only heir of Qinglong Chamber of Commerce, which ranks first among the 4 major chambers of commerce in Ningji City, Chen Xiaofeng is the prince of the night in Ningji City, a ruthless man you absolutely cannot afford to provoke. After hearing the reminder from the thin and short male classmate, Zhang Fengjai vaguely guessed the reason why Zhou Yaru went to the college restaurant for dinner. Although he was not afraid of the so-called prince of the night, he felt very unhappy that he was inexplicably used by others. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuchi. Chapter 157. Ningji Normal College, in the restaurant. After quickly scanning the hall that can accommodate 400 or 500 people dining at the same time, his eyes finally stopped at a row of empty seats near the glass windowsill of the hall. Walking to the empty seat, ignoring the strange looks of the people around him, Zhang Fengjai sat directly on the plastic chair. Then, through the bright glass window, watching the two male classmates who had just left the restaurant, running straight to a 5-story teaching building about 300 meters away from the restaurant at the speed of a 100-meter sprint, Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed with a trace of helplessness and depression. Because according to the reminder of the thin male classmate just now, combined with the discussion he heard just now, he knew the reason why the two male classmates ran to the teaching building. Stir-fried rapeseed flowers, fried peanuts, hot and sour potato shreds and steamed carp head. Just when the two male classmates quickly rushed into the teaching building and Zhang Fengjai retracted his gaze, a set of aluminum alloy tableware for serving dishes, as well as 2 small bowls of rice and 2 fist-sized steamed buns suddenly appeared on the table in front of him. Looking at the 4 dishes made of aluminum alloy, which were not very large in quantity and had a light soup, Zhang Fengjai explained the origins of the 4 dishes one by one, and a hint of unhappiness and sarcasm appeared in his eyes. "Zhou Yaru, this is what you call a sumptuous meal. Ha." Facing Zhang Fengjai's sarcasm, Zhou Yaru laughed awkwardly twice, sat directly opposite him, and then shamelessly explained. "Fengjai, although these 4 dishes look very plain and simple, they taste like delicious dishes with endless aftertaste, and they are definitely a sumptuous meal." Facing Zhou Yaru's sophistry, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but sneer and picked up the chopsticks, and then tasted the 4 delicious dishes praised by her, but they were barely edible. Sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, and salty, with color, fragrance and taste, it is indeed a sumptuous meal. After putting down the chopsticks and praising against his will, Zhang Fengjai stared into Zhou Yaru's eyes and ordered. "I hope you won't waste 4 dishes of the best in the world." There was a hint of indifference in his gaze, and a hint of threat in his indifferent tone. Zhou Yaru, who had realized that Zhang Fengjai was really angry, hurriedly lowered her head to pick up food and eat. Whether it was her own appetite or to maintain her slim figure, after a bowl of rice and a dozen chopsticks of vegetables, Zhou Yaru planned to end the meal that made her feel depressed and awkward. But at this moment, Zhang Fengjai put his rice in front of her, and then ordered in a calm tone. "Continue eating, no leftovers." Suddenly looking up at Zhang Fengjai, Zhou Yaru's eyes showed an unbelievable look, because she couldn't believe that the other party dared to coerce her, a delicate beauty. "Either you take the initiative to eat, or I will help you continue to eat." Ignoring Zhou Yaru's incredulous gaze, Zhang Fengjai threatened in a calm manner. Looking down at the food that was quite big for her, and then looking up at Zhang Fengjai who showed no mercy to her, Zhou Yaru felt a kind of grievance that she had never experienced before, and mist gradually appeared in her bright eyes. In response, Zhang Fengjai continued to stare at her without any mercy. Which idiot dared to touch Chen Xiaofeng's goddess? Just when Zhou Yaru was facing the dilemma of eating or not, an angry shout suddenly sounded in the restaurant. Suddenly turning her head to look at a handsome, strong, and outstanding young man who appeared at the door of the restaurant, Zhou Yaru felt a desire and joy for the first time. Because Chen Xiaofeng's timely appearance could completely get rid of Zhang Fengjai's threat, and she didn't have to continue eating food that exceeded her limit. "Yaru." The 4 eyes met, breaking through the barriers of time and space. Seeing Zhou Yaru's slightly red eyes, happy eyes, and mist in her eyes, Chen Xiaofeng immediately shouted in surprise. The overly enthusiastic call made Zhou Yaru quickly wake up from her loss of composure. After the joy in her eyes was replaced by indifference, she turned around, picked up the chopsticks, and began to eat silently. After all, The purpose of risking offending Zhang Fengjai was to get rid of Chen Xiaofeng's pursuit and entanglement. Boy, I don't care who you are, kneel down in front of me and swear now, promise not to approach and harass my goddess Zhou Yaru in the future, and then get out of the restaurant. Zhou Yaru's instant change of attitude and the scene of dining alone with Zhang Fengjai made Chen Xiaofeng rush to the table in a rage, and then threatened with an arrogant attitude. Otherwise, I will let you spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair. Ignoring Chen Xiaofeng's threat, Zhang Fengjai looked directly at Zhou Yaru, who was eating silently with her head down, and said indifferently, "It seems that this is the real reason why you took the initiative to invite me to dinner. Boy, you are looking for death." Seeing that the thin boy in front of him not only ignored him, but also dared to question the holy goddess, he pursued, Chen Xiaofeng, who was furious, punched Zhang Fengjai's cheek with a slightly ferocious face. Facing Chen Xiaofeng's heavy punch, Zhang Fengjai did not dodge and directly stretched out his hand to hold the opponent's fist. When he was about to force the opponent to kneel down and admit defeat, Chen Xiaofeng suddenly raised his right foot and kicked his ribs quickly like a gust of wind. If an ordinary person was kicked, with Chen Xiaofeng's trained leg strength, the lightest would be broken ribs and bedridden for 3 months, and the worst would be injured to death. So, facing Chen Xiaofeng's fierce kick, Zhang Fengjai, with a cold light in his eyes, quickly picked up the chopsticks with his free left hand, and then directly pierced the opponent's calf. Ah! The severe pain caused by the chopsticks piercing his calf made Chen Xiaofeng hug his leg and fall to the ground screaming. At the same time, a male classmate who had just gone to inform the news suddenly took out his mobile phone with a sudden change of expression, and then covered the phone with his hand and started to call for help. "Zhou Yaru, are you satisfied now?" Ignoring Chen Xiaofeng, who was hugging his leg and screaming, and ignoring the male classmate who informed him, Zhang Fengjai looked directly at Zhou Yaru, who was full of astonishment, and asked with a slightly raised corner of his mouth, "Zhang Fengjai, why are you so vicious?" Looking at Chen Xiaofeng, who was hugging his leg and screaming, and looking at the blood flowing from the calf pierced by the chopsticks, Zhou Yaru was slightly flustered and couldn't help but blame. "Pa!" Facing Zhou Yaru's accusation, Zhang Fengjai suddenly slapped the table hard, leaving a clear palm on the aluminum alloy table. He slowly stood up and asked with a serious look, "Zhou Yaru, if my attack just now was not timely and vicious enough, then do you know what kind of tragic end I will face after being kicked in the ribs?" "What end?" Zhou Yaru replied subconsciously. "The best physiognomist." Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 158. Ningji Normal College, in the restaurant. The internal organs are bleeding, and the soul is scattered and falling into reincarnation. After replying with gritted teeth, Zhang Fengjai turned and left the table, reminding calmly, "Zhou Yaru, I hope you can take care of yourself in the future. Zhang Fengjai, please don't leave." Although Zhang Fengjai did not show any anger when he turned and left, Zhou Yaru had a very strong feeling in her heart. She felt that the other party was suppressing his inner anger and would never let her go easily, so she quickly stood up to keep him and apologize. "I was wrong, I shouldn't have deceived you, and I shouldn't have used you as a shield to help me dispel Chen Xiaofeng's pursuit and entanglement." When Chen Xiaofeng heard the inside story revealed in Zhou Yaru's apology, the anger in his heart surged. After briefly suppressing the pain caused by the wound, he roared with a ferocious look and red eyes, "Zhou Yaru, you despicable bitch, Chen Xiaofeng, will never let you go." No matter Zhou Yaru's retention and apology, or Chen Xiaofeng's roar and threat, Zhang Fengjai walked out of the restaurant without seeing anything. However, just when he was about to reach the door of the restaurant, a young man who was walking towards him made him stop subconsciously. The young man who was walking towards him was only about 24 or 25 years old, wearing a loose casual outfit, giving people a very lazy feeling. Although the shoulder-length messy hair covered his eyes, through the gaps in the messy hair, he could still feel the other party's fierce eyes like a wolf. "Xiu Jiang, destroy him for me." Chen Xiaofeng, who also noticed the lazy young man, shouted with a hint of joy in his eyes. After hearing Chen Xiaofeng's order, the lazy young man called Xiu Jiang suddenly stopped and blew a breath with his lower lip slightly upturned. When the messy hair covering his eyes was blown up, a ferocious look that made people feel chilled was revealed. Just as the messy hair was blowing and covering his eyes again, Xiu Jiang rushed to Zhang Fengjai at a gust of wind speed, and hit his chin with his clenched right fist. Zhang Fengjai, who was not panicked at all, blocked Xiu Jiang's iron fist with his right palm. The slight pain from his palm made him realize the opponent's true strength and means. Xiu Jiang, whose iron fist was easily blocked, suddenly changed his face and quickly retreated. "Who are you?" Xiu Jiang, who suddenly stopped at the door of the restaurant, asked solemnly. "Soaked in the essence of precious medicinal materials and 5 kinds of poisons, and then let the body have defense and strength infinitely close to steel and iron bones." Without answering Xiu Jiang's question, Zhang Fengjai sighed with a trace of pity in his eyes. "It seems that you have not only suffered unimaginable torture and pain, but the guy who trained you is not a good person either. Who are you?" For Xiu Jiang, who has a body as strong as steel, he knows what is going on. Therefore, this makes him very nervous and more eager to know the other party's true origin. "The eyebrows, Danshan, and Longyang, 3 places are not perfect, so you have no advantage in front of me." Zhang Fengjai, who still did not answer Xiu Jiang's question, pointed out the vital point of the other party's steel body, and ordered calmly. "If you don't want to become a waste after your life is broken, get out of the way now. Xiu Jiang, if you dare to get out of the way, I will let Master Wu throw you into the poison pit, and then let you taste the punishment of the snake bite." Facing Zhang Fengjai's well-intentioned threat, Xiu Jiang showed a hint of hesitation in his eyes. But at this time, Chen Xiaofeng, who was able to endure the pain, threatened with all his might. After hearing Chen Xiaofeng's threat, Xiu Jiang instinctively shuddered, and the hesitant look in his eyes was instantly replaced by ruthlessness. Then, when he rushed over quickly, he directly used a boxing technique that would hurt both sides. "Ah!" In response, Zhang Fengjai sighed and quickly retreated, and took out a silver needle from his sleeve, and then used the method of ejecting a hidden weapon to directly pierce Xiu Jiang's forehead. The forward posture stopped immediately, and Xiu Jiang stood there motionless like a sculpture. Ignoring Xiu Jiang, who was sealed by the silver needle, Zhang Fengjai instantly returned to Chen Xiaofeng, and then reached out and grabbed his collar and lifted him up directly. "Boy, I am the only biological son of the president of the Qinglong Chamber of Commerce, and the only designated heir of the Chamber of Commerce." Although Zhang Fengjai easily subdued Xiu Jiang, whose strength was comparable to that of the great inner strength, which surprised Chen Xiaofeng, but thinking of the strength of the Qinglong Chamber of Commerce, he was not afraid at all and struggled desperately while threatening viciously. "If you don't want to implicate your relatives and die without a burial place, then put me down obediently." Poison pit, 10,000 snakes devouring the body. Ignoring Chen Xiaofeng's threat, Zhang Fengjai asked with a gloomy face. "It seems that the reason why your Qinglong Chamber of Commerce can become the leader of the 4 major chambers of commerce is that the backer behind it is this evil cultivator named Wu." "That's right." Without realizing the meaning of Zhang Fengjai's mention of the word evil cultivator, Chen Xiaofeng still threatened arrogantly. "Boy, Master Wu is an immortal who can call the wind and rain and drive poisonous beasts. If you dare to hurt me, no matter where you flee to, you will never escape Master Wu's tracking by his magic. If you fall into my father's hands, you will truly experience the pain of being unable to live and unable to die." Originally, when Zhang Fengjai heard Chen Xiaofeng mention the poison pit and the method of the snake bite, he suspected that the evil cultivator surnamed Wu was probably the mastermind behind the arrangement of the 5 beads condensing veins feng shui formation, and used the 5 poisons tracking technique to chase his evil cultivator afterwards. Now, when he heard Chen Xiaofeng's threatening words, mentioning that the evil cultivator surnamed Wu could drive poisonous beasts, his inner suspicion became more real. If the conflict with Chen Xiaofeng happened before entering the normal college, he might let the other party go because of his lack of strength and fear, and then fled back to the Shushan Taoist temple overnight. But after experiencing the baptism of the soul, the transformation of the state of mind, and the improvement of strength, he suddenly had an urge to continue fighting with the other party. It was driven by this idea of fighting that Zhang Fengjie not only ignored Chen Xiaofeng's threats, but also pressed him down on the dining table. Then, he cut his fingers and drew a god-trapping talisman, an evil-breaking talisman and a shape-changing talisman on Chen Xiaofeng's forehead, abdomen, and back. Then, he pressed Chen Hanan's 7 fatal acupuncture points with his right hand, intending to use his body as a battlefield and start the second fight with Master Wu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 159. Ningji Teachers College, in the restaurant. The pain caused by the 7 fatal acupuncture points being sealed made Chen Xiaofeng roll on the ground and scream in pain, which also made Zhou Yaru truly see the cold and ruthless side of Zhang Fengjie. At this moment, she felt very regretful, regretting that she pretended to be smart and used the other party. At this moment, she wanted to sincerely apologize to Zhang Fengjie, hoping to get his forgiveness and restore the friendship that was hard to establish. But Zhang Fengjie, who sealed Chen Xiaofeng's fatal acupuncture points, did not give her any time and opportunity to apologize. Flashing in front of Xiu Jiang, who was fixed, he stretched out his hand to take out the silver needle at the position of his eyebrows, and then he ordered with a gentle expression. Take Chen Xiaofeng to find the evil cultivator named Wu, and tell him that I, Taoist King Xiu, intend to resume the unfinished battle with him. Xiu Jiang obeys. A silver needle shot casually can pierce the vital point of the flesh of steel and iron bones, which makes Xiu Jiang guess the identity of the other party's Taoist cultivator. Therefore, facing Zhang Fengjie's order, Xiu Jiang responded respectfully, rushed to Chen Xiaofeng in 3 or 2 steps, and then directly picked him up and left the restaurant. At the same time, Zhang Fengjie also followed him out of the restaurant. The boy named Zhang Fengjie just now is so handsome and charming. Just when Zhang Fengjie just left the restaurant, the hall suddenly rang with the screams and exclamations of many female students like crazy. Even though he knew that Chen Xiaofeng was the heir of the Qinglong Chamber of Commerce, he was not afraid to take action. This shows that not only his own conditions are very excellent, but also his background is not inferior to that of the Qinglong Chamber of Commerce. He is definitely a top-notch tall, rich and handsome man. I want to pursue him. A beautiful girl whose appearance and figure can barely be regarded as the level of a school flower, after carefully analyzing Zhang Fengjie's various advantages, expressed her opinion to several friends and roommates around her. Fair competition, no one is allowed to play tricks. Several other girls also expressed their opinions. Hearing the comments and statements of some girls around her, Zhou Yaru was constantly struck by regret and self-blame, and she secretly made up her mind to rush out of the restaurant, and then chased after him along the path she had just taken. Silver needle seals life, finger method seals acupuncture points, official Taoist name. Just as everyone was discussing Zhang Fengjie's excellence and origin, behind a column in the northwest corner of the restaurant, a girl with long hair dyed light red, wearing leather jacket and leather pants, with an extremely hot figure and sexy and charming temperament, stared at the direction where Zhang Fengjie disappeared and said to herself. It seems that the young man who called himself King Xiu just now must be a core disciple from a famous and upright section. I just don't know whether he is from the 10 major sects or the Kunlun Mountains that have been secluded for 100 years. Zhang Fengjie, who left the restaurant, did not leave the normal college immediately. Instead, he mobilized his spiritual power to perform the Qingfeng step, speeding up to the moment when his state of mind was sublimated, and accidentally sensed a place in the college where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was abundant. Bamboo Pavilion Forest C. Looking at the 3-foot-high stone tablet in front of him and the words carved on it, Zhang Fengjai knew the origin of the bamboo pavilion forest with more than 2 acres of land in front of him. Ningji Normal College was founded by Yan Ting Chen, the 78th direct descendant of Yan Hui, the second sage. Yan Ting Chen, whose name is Zigu and whose nickname is Qingfeng, is a reclusive educator and thinker, and also a great writer with the legacy of his ancestors. Yan Ting Chen loves bamboo by nature and admires the aloofness of bamboo, so during the more than 10 years when he was in charge of the Normal College, he planted a bamboo forest in a secluded place in the college. If the overall feng shui layout of the Normal College is compared to a motionless dragon, then the bamboo forest is in the belly of the dragon, which should be the worst location in terms of geography and feng shui. But for some reason, the bamboo forest gathers a lot of spiritual energy from heaven and earth. Perhaps out of respect for the old principle, the entire bamboo forest is surrounded by an iron net about 2 meters high to prevent people from breaking in and destroying the bamboo forest. His sight quickly swept around, and after making sure that there were no teachers or students around, Zhang Fengjai jumped over the iron net 3 meters in the air and landed lightly on the stone road deep into the bamboo forest. Without much delay, he rushed into the bamboo forest quickly along the gravel path, and then stopped at the place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was the most abundant. Old principle, I'm sorry. After using his spiritual power to open his eyes and find a suitable position for the next breakthrough and battle, Zhang Fengjai bowed and apologized to the 9 bamboos in front of him. Then, he mobilized his strong physical strength, pulled up the 9 selected bamboos by the roots, sorted them out a little, and then sat cross-legged on the tidied open space. Then, he took out 5 5-element spirit beads the size of longan from his arms, and then placed the emerald green spirit beads in the east, the red spirit beads in the south, the purple spirit beads in the west, the gray spirit beads in the north, and the blue spirit beads in his hand. He took a deep breath, and practiced the Hunyuan taking heart method that he had chosen during the Josua ceremony, and began to absorb the abundant spiritual energy in the blue spiritual bead in his hand. Originally, according to his initial practice plan, he intended to use the 5 elements spirit beads and the 100-year-old wild ginseng to impact the 7th level of qi condensation, but the spiritual energy of heaven and earth stored in the depths of the bamboo forest, which was used to assist in breaking through the realm, was far more effective than the 100-year-old wild ginseng. At the same time, the upcoming battle also required him to choose to break through in the shortest possible time. Therefore, he temporarily changed his practice plan and chose to break through the 7th level of qi condensation in advance in the bamboo forest of the Normal College. As the water spirit energy in the blue spirit bead was forcibly absorbed into the body by the mind method, the spirit beads occupying the 4 directions of southeast, northwest, and northeast simultaneously exuded spirit energy of different qualities and input them into the blue spirit bead. At the same time, the heaven and earth spirit energy stored in the bamboo forest for decades, attracted by the mind method and the spirit beads, poured into the 5 spirit beads and Zhang Fengjai's body. As the spirit energy emerging from the 5 spirit beads increased, it gradually approached the state of gasification, causing colorful light to emerge in the center of the entire bamboo forest. At this time, a green bamboo snake with a body length of only more than 20 centimeters and a huge black spider with 8 legs suddenly appeared outside the iron net of the bamboo forest. When seeing the colorful light emerging from the depths of the bamboo forest, a trace of greed flashed in the cold eyes of the green bamboo snake and the black spider at the same time. Then, the green bamboo snake entered the bamboo forest through the gap in the iron net, and the black spider jumped over the iron net and entered the bamboo forest with a light jump. Break it! Just as the green bamboo snake and the black spider accelerated towards the depths of the bamboo forest, a roar suddenly sounded from the depths of the bamboo forest. Along with the roar, a strong momentum quickly spread throughout the bamboo forest, directly forcing the green bamboo snake and the black spider back to the iron net. After looking at each other, the green bamboo snake immediately turned its head and left the bamboo forest through the gap in the iron net, and the black spider jumped over the iron net and escaped from the bamboo forest without much delay. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuqi. Chapter 160. Ningji Normal College, in the Bamboo Forest. Zhang Fenjai, who was immersed in the realm breakthrough, did not notice that the green bamboo snake and black spider, which had been promoted to the level of monsters, were approaching with bad intentions, nor did he know that the powerful momentum that erupted when he broke through the realm directly injured and scared away the two powerful monsters. After his realm was successfully promoted to the 7th level of chi condensation, he quickly retracted the powerful momentum that he had exuded when he broke through the realm, and then put away the 5 elements spirit beads that did not consume too much spiritual power. Then, he began to use the remaining little spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the bamboo forest to accelerate the consolidation of the power after the realm breakthrough. Time passed by minute by minute. 10 minutes later, just when Zhang Fenjai had just consolidated the power of the realm breakthrough, a blood-red light appeared out of thin air, emitting a fierce murderous aura, and shot directly at the position between his eyebrows. Zhang Fenjai suddenly opened his eyes, and after a terrifying gleam flashed in his eyes, his right hand placed on his knees immediately ejected a white light. The white light accurately hit the red light. It's impolite not to return the favor. After the white light and the red light offset each other, Zhang Fenjai stood up quickly, protested to the bamboo forest in front of him, and then quickly condensed a magic formula of transformation with his 10 fingers. When the magic formula of transformation was printed in the air, it quickly transformed into a majestic tiger. Woo! Accompanied by a low roar, the tiger plunged into the void where the red light appeared just now. On the top floor of the tea house about 5 miles away from the fertilizer plant, Chen Xiaofeng, with a dazed look, sat cross-legged on the wooden board. On both sides of him, there were Xiu Jiang and a middle-aged man in his 40s wearing a Zhongshan suit and with a dignified look. In front of him, there stood a middle-aged Taoist priest with a frown on his face. Just when Zhang Fenjai used the spiritual power he had just upgraded to disperse the red light, the middle-aged Taoist priest's face changed slightly and he took a step back, then looked at Chen Xiaofeng with a serious look. Woo! When a low tiger roar sounded out of nowhere in the tea house, a 2-meter-tall and 4-meter-long tiger quickly jumped out from Chen Xiaofeng's abdomen. At the moment when the tiger rushed out, the dignified middle-aged man, with a flash of fear in his eyes, retreated to the edge of the corner of the tea house, and shouted to Xiu Jiang. "Come and protect me quickly." After hearing the middle-aged man's order, he quickly bypassed Chen Xiaofeng's Xiu Jiang, directly mobilized the steel-like physical strength, and began to look for the flaws of the tiger. Seeing Xiu Jiang's intention to find the flaws of the tiger, the middle-aged Taoist priest waved his sleeves to release 5 kinds of poisons, and shouted with contempt in his eyes. "This is a fight between our monks, you are not qualified to participate." Faced with the middle-aged Taoist priest's scolding, Xiu Jiang quickly lowered his head and dispersed his physical strength. Although the middle-aged man's eyes flashed with a trace of displeasure, he did not dare to say much. Pointing at the blue tiger that was about to pounce, the middle-aged Taoist priest gave an order to the 5 poisonous creatures. 5 poisonous creatures devour the tiger. After hearing the order from the middle-aged Taoist priest, the 8-legged spider sprayed out a web to trap the blue tiger, the green bamboo snake attacked the tiger's head, the toad attacked the tiger's back, the centipede attacked the tiger's legs, and the red scorpion attacked the tiger's belly. Under the joint attack of the 5 poisonous creatures, the blue tiger was torn apart before it could show its power. Since it is not polite to come without returning the favor, then you should also take my move and try it. At the moment when the blue tiger was completely torn apart, the middle-aged Taoist priest took out an exquisite porcelain bottle from his sleeve, and while demonstrating to Chen Xiaofeng who was sitting cross-legged, He poured out a drop of blood from the porcelain bottle. And this drop of blood with a strong fishy smell was the original blood essence that forced the 5 poisonous creatures to spit out when they were used to track Zhang Fengjai in the abandoned fertilizer factory. When throwing the life essence blood in his palm into the air, the middle-aged Taoist priest began to silently chant a spell respectfully. 5 poisons suppress the 5 elements, the 5 elements fall on the 3 souls, the 3 souls determine the 7 spirits, and the 7 spirits pursue the real murderer. Accompanied by the low voice of the middle-aged Taoist priest, the life essence blood thrown into the air quickly turned into an extremely ugly monster. When seeing the ugly monster with a green snake head, a red scorpion tail, spider legs, a toad back, and a centipede body, even Chiu Chiang, who had a special experience, flashed a trace of fear in his eyes. The middle-aged man's face turned pale as paper in an instant, and his eyes looking at the middle-aged Taoist priest showed an extremely fearful look. Because he never knew that the usually low-key middle-aged Taoist priest actually had such a terrifying method, which made the only remaining pride in his heart disappear in an instant. After looking at the middle-aged man and Chiu Chiang with cold eyes, the ugly monster rushed directly to Chen Xiaofeng's abdomen, and then appeared out of thin air in the bamboo forest of the normal college. When Zhang Fengjai saw the ugly monster that appeared out of nowhere and the evil aura that he would never forget, a fierce fire immediately ignited in his eyes. Then, he directly mobilized 90% of the spiritual power in his dantian, and then shouted with 10 fingers condensing the spell. The 3 pure ones descended to the mortal world to protect my soul and settle the world. Along with Zhang Fengjai's shouting, a giant nearly 3 meters tall, holding a 2-meter giant sword, wearing golden armor, and emitting dazzling golden light, quickly appeared in front of the ugly monster. Daodu, look over there in the bamboo forest. About 20 meters away from the bamboo forest is a field of artificially cultivated flowers. It is also a sacred place for men and women in the normal college who have a crush on each other to express their love for each other. At the moment when the giant in golden armor appeared, the dazzling golden light erupted from the bamboo forest, immediately attracting the attention of a couple who had just arrived in front of the flowers and were about to express their feelings to each other. Could it be that aliens landed in the bamboo forest? The boy, who watched a lot of science fiction movies, immediately pulled the girl to the iron net after making a surprise guess. Daodu, the aliens in the movie are all bad guys, let's leave quickly. Seeing the boy using stones to break open the iron fence, the girl warned with worry in her eyes. Yuan, don't you know that everything in the movie was all made up by those directors and editors? The boy did not give up the idea of breaking open the iron net because of the girl's reminder. He said excitedly while pulling out the broken wire. Moreover, if the dazzling golden light in the bamboo forest is really an alien, then whether we record it with a mobile phone or pick up something left by the alien, we will be completely rich. Although she didn't agree with the boy's statement from the bottom of her heart, the girl couldn't persuade her too much before the couple's relationship was truly confirmed, so she could only choose to acquiesce in the other party's risky move.